afternoon, Rotarians, visitors, and guests. My name is Carol Wand, and I am your MC for today. Just a little housekeeping before we officially open the meeting. A reminder, if you haven't already bought a ticket in today's charity raffle for a chance to win a bottle of Penfolds 1997 Grange Hermitage or one of the other two premium wines, the raffle will remain open for a short while more. Tickets are $5 each, $45 for 10, and credit card is available. Restrooms are down the back and around to the right. So, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country across Australia, and especially the Rotary and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation on whose lands we gather today. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. We honor their enduring connection to land, sea, and community, and thank them for protecting this coastline and its ecosystems for countless generations. We recognize that we have much to learn from their deep knowledge of caring for country and living sustainably. Please ensure your glass is charged for the loyal toast by President Philip Cornick.
Good afternoon, Rotarians, guests and friends. Before we begin, I invite you to pause and reflect on why gatherings like this matter. World Environment Day reminds us that stewardship of the natural world is inseparable from our support of our communities, our futures, and ultimately one another. The Rotary movement has environmental sustainability as one of our major areas of focus. We know that thriving ecosystems can create economic opportunities as well as supporting people's well-being. Today is also an opportunity to celebrate partnership in action. Last week, Rotary Melbourne and the xpand Foundation signed a Memorandum of Understanding supporting Growing Futures initiative in Timor-Leste. This partnership will help communities restore forests, strengthen livestock livelihoods, and create long-term environmental and economic resilience. It is a practical demonstration of how local action and international cooperation can work hand in hand. Rotary Melbourne, we are increasingly recognising that environmental sustainability is not a standalone issue. It's connected to health, peace, education, food security, biodiversity, economic opportunity, and social cohesion as reflected by today's luncheon. Through our annual Environment and Sustainability Awards, we celebrate young people whose leadership and innovation gives us more confidence in the future. Through our initiatives in the Rotary Peace Park and our support for the Melbourne Arboretum, we hope to create spaces that foster environmental stewardship, community connection and hope. Today, we will hear from Professor Graeme Samuel, AC. His work helped shape today's Australia's environmental reform agenda and legislation, a remarkable 5-year journey from policy recommendations to Parliament House. Meaningful progress rarely comes quickly or easily, yet lasting impact is achieved when people work together with purpose and persistence. Let's celebrate partnership, practical action and opportunity and help us build a more sustainable, peaceful and hopeful future. I would ask that you join with me in toast Australia and Rotary International. Thank you, and please be seated. So, we've already recognised Professor Graeme Samuel. His work helped us shape, and Graeme will be more fully introduced later in the program. But could you please join me in acknowledging and making him welcome, please? We also have here as our guests current District 9800 Governor Peter Shepherd and District Governor-elect Graeme Hope. So we've got a few to go, so we'll hang off with the applause for a bit later. Pat Armstrong, incoming Chair of ESRAC Oceania, the International Rotary Group for the Environment, and receiving the 2026 Environmental Sustainability Award, we have students and teachers from Eltham High School in Killester College, Springvale. You have noticed today fundraising is for the xpand Foundation, Growing Trees in East Timor project and Second Bite Fair Share. Representing the Xpand Foundation, we have Andrew Mayer, and representing Second Bites, we have co-founder Simone Carson and CEO Daniel Moorhead. Other guests we have today, it's got special guests, but all of our guests are special. Other guests we have today are guests of our event chairman, past President Reg Smith, and could we just pause a moment to, actually we will do some applause for this, Reg and the awards team for their work today and putting this function together. It's really good. From the Royal Society of Victoria, President Rob Gill AM and CEO Emma Cove. From the Melbourne Arboretum, we have founders Maggie and Hamish McDonald and Matthew Weller, General Manager. And from the Sofitel, we have our Ambassador, former General Manager, and can I say Clive, our friend, Clive Scott. We also have many other special guests and members of visiting Rotarians, including Lucinda Garrido, a 2013 Rotary World Peace Fellow to Argentina. Could you please join me in a collective warm welcome to all of them. As the staff continue to serve you a meal, we'll hear from Clive Scott, Sofitel General Manager, Sofitel Melbourne Ambassador and former GM. Clive devoted more than 50 years of his life to the hotel industry, including 18 years as the General Manager of this hotel, helping to establish it as one of Melbourne's leading hotels. A respected business leader, Clive is increasingly recognised for his commitment to sustainability through his work with Rethink Sustainability. In 2021, he was appointed a member of the Order of Australia for significant service to the hotel industry and the arts. Clive continues to serve the community through a number of advisory and charitable organisations. Let's hear from Clive, along with Michael Robinson, Sofitel's Regional Director of Learning and Development, on their environmental sustainabilities and initiatives. Over to you, Clive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm actually joined by Michael Robertson. He's not one of the Robinson family. Not lost at Ireland, yeah, lost. So we thought while you're in a hotel, we'd tell you a little bit about what's going on in the hotel business. So Michael is the Regional Director of Learning and Development for all brands, Sofitel and Gallery, and there's more properties as well, a lot in Australia and New Zealand. So what are you at the moment directing hotels to do in terms of sustainability?
The right thing.
Right.
That's the good summary.
Okay, so in your regional role, you're really setting up the hotels for the future. So you are looking at getting hotels to have some accreditation. So what did you do here in Sofitel Melbourne?
So at Sofitel Melbourne, from 2015, we had ISO 14001, which for you compliance friends out there is an international standard for organizations to make sure that they have a good environmental management system. For us, it wasn't really enough. It kind of just showed that we should be recycling and measuring our waste, which wasn't really adding any other value to it. So in 2023, we became Green Globe certified. Green Globe is an eco label that a hotel or a convention center could opt in for. It's audited by a third party and it's assessed on your socio-cultural, quality, health and safety and environmental measures, which means that when we're doing good things for people, it's beyond just sorting waste. It's actually like how we're embedding our culture, like the arts, for instance, to support the ecosystem that we operate in.
Good. I see on the table we have water and crafts. So we don't use plastic bottles anymore. We don't buy water in. How do we do it?
Yes. So in 2019 at this hotel, we eliminated all of the single-use plastic water bottles that were in the property. That ended up leading to the #1 guest complaint that we had for around 4 years, and quality within Green Globe.
So the guests like the plastic bottle?
Oh, they absolutely did not like being told to drink the Melbourne's tap water from the bathroom. So in a luxury environment, how do we maintain that we have some level of sustainability commitment, not at the expense of the guest satisfaction? So for 3 years, we finessed and workshopped what could be a solution for us that's going to be sustainable for the business and for the planet. And so in 2024, we partnered with Moda Killester, who do filtered water bottling systems, and we created our own water bottling plant in-house, where each bottle of water gets sent to a guest room, is washed, sanitized, refilled, and resealed to close the loop on our water bottling problem and to eliminate that guest complaint.
Did you eliminate it?
Yes!
Very
It's
good.
so satisfying.
Very good. 4 years of blame on you. Very good.
Correct.
So lately I've noticed in the press that hotels are getting a slap about things like slippers in the rooms, in plastic bags and things, right?
Yes.
What you were talking about, that it's really a different problem.
Yeah, so I don't know if you know, but we had a little bit of a pandemic a couple of years ago, and that really kind of woke everyone up around like hygiene factors. And so things like plastic became a really good thing to have to make it hygienic and sealed. So if you're going into a room and you see that maybe the slippers were washed before, you might go, oh, I don't actually think I want to use them. So how do we maintain that we still have that single-use product, but the end-of-life cycle is reduced? So rather than having a single-use plastic wrapped slipper, we have a tartan bag that we reuse to put the new slippers in each time we change them over.
So you're changing the perception of what...
Change the perception, but also like change the design in the system. So if we have to have a pen wrapped for hygiene reasons, instead of wrapping it in plastic, can we wrap it in paper? That way we can eliminate that additional waste life cycle rather than just trying to eliminate the hygiene.
So toothbrushes, combs...
Yes, all in no more single-use plastic anywhere. The idea is everything should be home compostable wherever possible.
So if they believe that they can compost it at home, then they'll believe that this is a clean, hygienic material.
It means that if we have to throw it into landfill and we can't recycle it, then what can we make sure that when it is in landfill, it has a finite life cycle?
Okay. So you're saying... Reduce.
And then we'll reuse, and then we'll try to recycle.
Very good. The other one I saw, our chairman, Sebastian Bazin, worldwide chairman, discussing buffets and the waste of food on buffets, because there's an awful lot of food put out
Yes.
that isn't eaten. And so what have you done about trying to eliminate this problem?
It's a great question. Food waste in general is a really big concern for hotels. There's a lot of food waste that ends up into the bin. One thing that we do very well here at the hotel is making sure that all of the organic waste is separated into an organics bin. But what we've become really good at is making sure that we're weighing the waste. So how can we eliminate waste in the first place? So for the past 2 years, we've been using a Winnow system, which is like an AI tool that takes a live photo of every single item that the chefs throw into the bin to figure out what was the gram of that waste and then what was the cost of the waste that we purchased to throw out. So we can look at how do we redesign menus. So things like a high tea, for instance, we found out very quickly that crusts, when you cut off, they add up. So how do we redesign the menu so the finger sandwiches don't have that crust in the first place? So maybe it's a little brioche bun that we don't waste any other product that goes into it. And can I keep going?
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks. I can do this all day.
You're on a roll.
Thanks.
Go for it.
So another thing that we did was with William Anglis, which is a hospitality school in the city. We did a trial, I think it's a research project is what we would call it. We trialed a few different messages to put on buffets to reduce food waste. We had 2 messages that we tried. The first one was advising the guests of how many calories are in a croissant to reduce the croissant wastage for breakfast. First thing in the morning, not a great message. The second thing we tried is to advise that we are doing the right thing trying to reduce food waste. So please do your part, only take 1 croissant at a time if you'd like. Yeah, didn't really have much success factor. Our sister hotel in Asia though, they put up a different message that I refused to put up, which was that we charge for plate waste. And when guests found out they would be charged for how much waste was left over for breakfast, all of a sudden every plate was clean. I don't know how to best adopt that in a luxury setting here, but I do love it.
So you haven't tried it?
I haven't tried to tell the guests that on top of the room rate, on top of the breakfast, we're also going to charge you for your waste. Not yet. I'm so close.
So in general, what is the company actually saying about sustainability, environment, etc.?
A lot. It boils down to 3 key things. So it's all around stay, eat, and people. So stay, eat, explore. So when we're staying with us, how to make sure that it's going to be an environmentally sound decision to stay with us. So are we doing things like tracking our emissions, tracking our waste, designing menus to have a 25% vegetarian scope in there? When you're eating, is that food delicious? But also, is it local? Are we importing ingredients? Have we eliminated ingredients that we know aren't good for the planet? And then when you're exploring, how are we partnering dabbling with different things, like an arts program, for instance, to make the city that you're exploring a great place to be.
But not travel too much.
Well, I do recommend travel, but travel locally for now. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Tell me, do you think you're making a change?
Yeah, I think that, like Green Globe, for instance, it kind of opened us up to this whole socio-cultural piece that we hadn't really had in our brand standards before. So the brand standards always would say bonjour, we have this little bit of French and local destination, but we hadn't really kind of tapped into what are we doing for our like First Nations storytelling. Whereas Green Globe kind of gave us that governance to incorporate that as part of our brand DNA. I think that's been a big shift for us, that we go, okay, it's French, it's Melbourne, but it's also relevant to the history of the location that we're in. It's a bit more grounded, and you can kind of feel a little bit of a difference. When we're designing something or we're playing around with a concept on something, we can look at a big, broader spectrum of criteria that we should be aiming towards.
So would you say that the group is asking you to make real changes? Things that actually have a real effect?
Yes, I think for food waste, for instance, we had a 1 month, our executive chef's not here, so I can say this. His food cost was out of control 1 month, just 1 month. He's been here for 22 years, he knows what he's doing, but that 1 month he goes, oh, what happened to my food cost? How do I find out what's going on? And then he remembered that we're tracking all of our waste. So the first thing he did was check this AI footage of the bins to figure out what have we thrown out, because I need that money to reduce my food cost. And that kind of shift where it's not a chef thinking that, oh, my menu isn't priced right, or this isn't there, is now like, okay, holistically, what have I done to contribute to this? And what things should I be looking at to make sure that I have an impact, financially and environmentally.
Okay, so thank you and congratulations for the work you're doing.
Well, thanks.
Very, very good.
That was it.
Thanks a lot.
Keep going.
I would state that the company is very eager to make real changes, right? And it really believes that you cannot affect the environment unless individual properties, individual hotels make a change. One of the biggest costs we have actually is in the building of our hotels, to ensure that we build them to a low environmental damaging standard. And that's something the company spends a lot of money working on, to make sure that, because we are at the moment opening a hotel 1 a month around the world. And when you look at it, it's not only us, there are another 6 to 7 companies in the world that are opening 1 a month. And there are 4 hotels in China that are opening 1 a week. So to really create some effect on the environment, you really need to work out, well, what are you doing when you're building those hotels and the damage that it's causing? And they are making an effort to try. So I hope you found that interesting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barbara Girondes and I chair the Rotary Club of Melbourne 2026 Environmental Sustainability Award. In 2021, Melbourne Rotary ran its inaugural award focusing on improving ecological sustainability. Previous awardees included Claire Moore from Sweet Justice, Phoebe Gardner and Alex Arnold from Bardi, Beth Mendel, and Emily Jarvinen, who were the sustainability captains from Star of the Sea for their project on fast fashion. Last year we had the environment friends from St Monica's College in Epping, who have since been mentored by the Arboretum, which has been terrific. And we also have a special commendation that was awarded to Manon Beauchamp-Tardot from Little Green Panda. And we're pleased to have Manon with us today, and who has since joined our club. So thank you, Manon. So again this year, we are focusing the award on tomorrow's leaders. The award is inspired by the need to take action to support the environment, being one of Rotary's 7 areas of focus. This year's award is focused on excellence in environmental sustainability in secondary school-aged children who have made a significant contribution to their community. The 2026 award criteria is for a group of secondary school students who have created or developed a project that demonstrates leadership in sustainability and community engagement. The purpose of the award is to inspire tomorrow's leaders in the focus of sustainability, demonstrate innovation and ideas, and create engagement to be inspired by other school students. The award is for $5,000. It's a grant to be paid to the school of the winning entrant and to be spent on environmental sustainability projects. All secondary school students in metropolitan Melbourne were invited, and only those who addressed the criteria were actually considered. This year we only received a small number of applications, 2 of which were outstanding. And so we decided with the selection panel, and I thank my panel there, Sharon and Mark, we decided to actually split the award between the two groups because we just couldn't decide. But not only that, the submissions were varied. They were very, very different. So before I present the award, I have some news to share, which I think President Phillip already has. Melbourne Rotary is now a Gold Enviro Club. Now what that means is that we've been recognised by Rotary International for our achievements in the environmental sustainability space, and of course we've just recently signed an MOU with xpand Net Zero, where all our profits from today are going. So I'm delighted to have our awardees here today, and if you'd like to come up. And unfortunately we're missing a couple because there's a bit of illness. So from Eltham High School, we've got Jaron Nolan and Graeme and Anushka, and unfortunately Finn couldn't make it today. And if you girls would like to come on the other side as well. And from Killester College in Springvale for their project on Bridget's Blessing, we have Loan Hum and Jennifer Lay, and unfortunately Alaska McKee couldn't make it today. Now I will start with Bridget's Blessing, if you girls could come here. I'm not going to read the citation. Have we got the citations? Where's Joe? Oh, in the bulletin. We will send you a framed citation. Oh, they're there. Oh, they? Sorry, I need an assistant. With both schools, I'm not going to read them all because this will take more time than the guest speaker. So, but I want to award you both with your citation, which is just a little bit of an explanation about what your project is. The school has already been paid their $2,500. So keep on the back and make sure you put it to good use next year. But first of all, I'd like to invite Loan, who's going to give us a bit of an explanation about their project. So Loan is from Killester College in Springvale, and their project is Bridget's Blessing. Thank you.
Dear Rotarians, special guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this incredible honour. On behalf of Killester College, we are proud to accept the Melbourne Rotary Environmental Sustainability Award. We are especially grateful to be sharing this recognition with Eltham High School, and we thank Rotary Melbourne for valuing student-led action. Bridget's Blessings, our school op shop, was driven about concern about waste, particularly about how much wearable clothing is discarded. As Year 11 VCE vocational major students, we wanted to create something that would make our school community different. What started as a small idea grew into a whole school initiative grounded in sustainability, compassion, and social justice. Bridget's Blessings is not just an op shop. It's a space where students can rethink consumption, take action, and support one another. By encouraging donations, reuse, and ethical consumption, we are helping to reduce textile waste while making affordable clothing accessible to our community. Through this project, we have developed real-world skills in teamwork, communication, problem-solving, and enterprise. We have also learned the importance of adapting to challenges, such as finding ways to increase engagement and participation around the school. This award will also help us expand and strengthen Bridget's Blessings. We plan to invest in improved shelving, displays, and signage to enhance the space, as well as sustainable packaging and equipment like sewing machines to support upcycling. We hope to run more student-led workshops, including sewing and upcycling activities, and hosting clothing swap events to further promote circular fashion. In addition, we aim to support our school's green team by contributing to a greenhouse project where students can cook, grow, and sell produce, continuing the cycle of sustainability and student enterprise. Bridget's Blessings is a reflection of our values and what students can achieve when allowed to lead meaningful change. Thank you again for recognizing and supporting our work.
Thank you, Luana. Now I'll call on Joan from Eltham High School to let you know about the project.
Good day, everyone. I'd first of all like to make an acknowledgement to the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation and the connection they have to our project. So, I'll bring you on a journey. So, me and two other students, and also one that couldn't come, unfortunately, we went to a leadership school in Marlow, so far away from here. And we learnt leadership skills. They taught us to grow, and they also taught us to give back to the community. So our project, which is the Community Indigenous Garden, was meant to give back to our community and also to share awareness of Indigenous culture and the environment. Now, there's been a lot of negative things in the media about young people as of late, right? But this award that Rotary is giving us is allowing us to have a real impact in our community and on young people, to educate them about the environment and about Indigenous people. Now, this Indigenous garden will allow us to implement Indigenous foods into our cooking program at Eltham High. And it will teach kids not only about connection to food and how it's grown, but also Indigenous culture and also the environment, since they'll be managing it themselves. So thank you so much, Rotary, for allowing us to have this opportunity to make a real change.
Thank you, Joan. Also, on behalf of the Eltham High School, one of the local elders, Uncle Charles Pacana, who was working with the students from Eltham High School, was invited but was unable to attend today. So on behalf of the Environmental Awards Committee, I congratulate you all again. Use your money well and just keep it up. This is very inspiring. Thank you. And I think I need to call on Adrian to the podium. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Barbara. Professor Graeme Samuel AC is one of Australia's most respected figures in public policy, regulation and governance. As professor at Monash University Business School, he led the independent review of the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, or EPBC Act, which provides the blueprint for long-awaited reform. The EPBC Act, originally enacted in 2000, set the framework for protecting Australia's biodiversity and culturally significant sites. And Professor Samuel's work directly informed the new environmental legislation passed in November 2025 under the Albanese government. A former chair of the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, he's also served in prominent leadership roles across community and business, including President of Dementia Australia, Chairman of the Victorian Taxi Services Commission, and board positions with Opera Australia, Melbourne and Olympic Parks Trust, the Melbourne Cricket Ground Trust, Airlines for Australia and New Zealand, and Quebec's Proprietary Limited, to mention just a few. He was also an inaugural commissioner of the Australian Football League. Graeme's community service spans leadership in sporting and cultural organisations and national policy forums, recognised with his appointment as a Companion of the Order of Australia for eminent service to public administration and the community. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Graeme Samuel. Today's going to take the form of a fireside chat. We don't have a fire here, Graeme, but we're certainly going to find a bit of information about Graeme's journey with the act that I just mentioned and also other elements of his public life too. So I guess to kick things off, Graeme, you've led reviews and reforms across many sectors during your career. What persuaded you to take on the review of Australia's environmental laws, knowing it was likely to be one of the most contested policy debates in the country?
I was asked, and it's always like a challenge. But you went into it contested. When then Environment Minister certainly asked me to do it, I said, well, two things. Why me? And I said, I know nothing about the environment. She said, because you do know how to do a review, and I want you to come completely without any preconceptions or biases or prejudices at all. Clean sheet of paper. I said, well, that's fine, that's good. And then I turned to her and I said, you know, this will be so contested, there will be strong advocates both for and against environmental protection, biodiversity conservation. I said, I can confidently predict that the only people at my funeral will be my family and those that want to see me dead and buried. She said, yes, but it will be the largest funeral ever seen in Australia.
So I guess when you started though, like what surprised you most about what you found?
Well, the beginning was that I asked the department to give me a compilation of all the laws and regulations. They were that high. And I started to read them. Okay, what a job that was. But I found out that about 90% of it was process, so little of it was outcome. So it was all about you file this application, file that application, etc., etc. The other thing that was replete throughout the documents, throughout the legislation regulations, was the weasel words. That is substantial, significant, where appropriate, where possible, you know, all this stuff that was the let-outs. And was it any wonder that, oh, and by the way, ministerial discretion was replete also throughout. So was it any wonder that, you know, any time an applicant made an approach for a proposal for development, whatever it is, they just said put the application in and then they shot off to the minister and they said, we think that this is insignificant on its impact on the environment, we think it is immaterial, and we do not think it's appropriate, etc. And so the minister had a conga line of applicants outside his or her office, you know, really there to push the issue. On top of all that, you had certain states, particularly Queensland and WA, who were much more focused on receiving royalties from mining in particular than they were on protecting the environment. And one of the big battles we had was to deal with two groups. One was West Australian government in particular, and that involved the West Australian Chamber of Mines. And I remember when the review ultimately came out, in a Senate hearing, the CEO of the West Australian Chamber of Mines turned around and he said in the Senate hearing, if Samuel's recommendations are adopted, there'll be no new mining ventures in WA forever. And I repeated this in a forum that I was attending, and I said, well, this is the greatest load of utter self-serving nonsense you've ever heard. The CEO rang me and he said, Graeme, that's outrageous, it's defamatory. I said, mate, calm down, just read your hands hard. And I said, then you'll know exactly what you said. I quoted you verbatim. It's the last I heard from you. So you do have these extremes all over the place, Adrian, and it's a major battle.
Yeah, so I guess touching on that, dealing with sort of mining interests, dealing with state governments. So the reviews that you conducted sort of included hearing from governments, from industry, but also traditional owners, from scientists, environmental groups, and many of them have fundamentally different views. So what was the most challenging part of them trying to bring those different views together?
The challenge was actually not as big as you think, because what happened was the review started in October 31, 2019. 30th of June 2020, I had submitted a draft interim report to government. And that interim report was published on the 21st of July of that year. And then what I did was I drew together 21 significant interest groups from the Business Council of Australia, the Chamber of Mines, the farmers, scientists, the academics, the conservationists, Conservation Foundation, the Environmental Defenders Office, etc. There's 21 of them, they're all listed there. I sat down around a table and said, righto, here's the deal, guys. If you insist on 100% of your aspirations, you will get nothing, I can guarantee it. If you insist on only 80% of your aspirations, I think we can get there. But remember this, The report will be mine, it'll be my view, it won't be yours, but I'll take account of what you have to put to me, but don't go for 100% because you won't get it. Now, interestingly, around the table, they sat and listened, they said, right, we agree. Right around the table, they agreed. I'll tell you a bit later on what happened after the report was published, and Scott Morrison intervened to say that the report's not going to be implemented, but we'll come to that in a moment.
So I guess that's maybe leading me to this point. So I guess, was there a moment during the review that you faced that, well, this is a pretty big mountain to climb, and the scale of challenges Australia facing was maybe too high?
No, never. Look, I've done many reviews for government, in the not-for-profit sector in my life, and nothing's ever been too hard. I was talking to Michelle Grattan this morning for a podcast, and we were talking about the Chalmers tax reform package. I said, look, the essence of reform is to analyse thoroughly what you're doing, be totally committed, be dedicated, be determined, and above all, have courage and communication. Courage is important because you will get turned off by the vested interest, and communication is important because you've got to actually be able to explain what's about. That's what makes tax so hard to reform, because it's a highly complex issue, and it is very difficult to reform tax because of the complexity. We've seen it in the past 3 or 4 weeks, and I'll lay my colours right out on the table. I think that what Chalmers and Albanese have done with the budget is admirable and miraculous, and for those of you that think that it's going to be the end of small business, it's going to be the end of the economy, it's going to be the end of the world, just take it calm, guys, because that's not the case. We had this when the wandering off. When we did the GST reform, Robert Gerald of the Council of Social Services and myself as chair of the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry decided we get together. I might say there are a couple of people around the table of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry that said, what the hell are you doing talking to the Council of Social Service? And I said, listen, a tax reform proposal from business alone will never get there. It's got to be a public interest, something facing the public generally. So we promoted the GST. Now, for those that can remember back to then, inflation was going to run rampant and was going to kill the economy. Small business would be destroyed. It actually didn't happen, right? But here were esteemed economists that actually were out there saying inflation will run rampant and small business will be destroyed because the obligation to do the business activities taken to the pass. Hasn't happened, right? So what I said on the environment reform was these things will work. The beauty of the environment reforms is this: is first of all, wiped away the process, item 1. Secondly, said, right, the important thing is the outcomes. And the outcomes have got to provide certainty to business, that is to proponents, and certainty to regulators, and reduce the role of the minister as far as possible, because you don't want that conga line of activists that are there to pray at his door and apply all the pressures. And so that's what we did. The important thing was we built into the reforms and in the legislation now, it's what I call a self-help mechanism. And we devised this again when Peter Tesh and I, his former ambassador to Moscow, did the review of the Defence Trade Controls Act. You think something's hard. Hey, listen, start focusing on export of sensitive military material outside Australia. But so we did that, and I said, self-help is this. Under the law as it used to be, I've got a proposal to mine, flick it into the department, let them sort it out. Hopeless. So now, what will happen under the law as it now stands is that you've got the law, you've got environmental standards which you formulate at the moment. I can come back to those because they're really important. Then the third thing is you'll have guidelines issued by the Department and the Minister as to how those rules, those environmental standards, will be interpreted. Then on top of that, you will have rulings issued by the Department or the Minister or the Environment Protection Authority, which will show how they've interpreted the standards in given cases. A bit like the Australian Tax Office tax rulings, right? You've got that whole compendium, and then the final thing is, if the government actually wants to do this, is it will select a cohort of independent advisors that are there to go through your proposal and to say, yeah, tick, 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 oops, hold on, I've got a problem with that one, better come back, it's going to have to be addressed, tick, 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 right? And you do it all, and then a proponent says, well, golly, barring that one issue I've got to deal with, it looks like I've got it covered, it's all done, right? And so that's the beauty of what we've done. It's certainty, it's self-help, it's all those processes are all there. And I think it's the certainty that businesses wanted in the past on top of which, and this is the final thing, I'm sorry, it's so much to tell you about a 450-page report, but the really important thing is this. Under the law as it then stood, when you had an application for a proposal, development or a mining proposal, you had to go to both the Commonwealth and the state. And the Commonwealth would do its assessment and the state would do its assessment. Now the Commonwealth managed to devolve or to accredit states to do the assessments, but they were never really well done. They were you know, if you went to WA, the assessment was pretty easy. How do you think Duke and Gorge blow up occurred if you really followed strict principles as to how to deal with Indigenous culture and the like? And 46,000 years of Indigenous culture blown up because the West Australian government gave the green light to Rio to actually do just that. So you know, there's all that that's now covered. And what we said was there ought to be a single touch. What the Commonwealth ought to do is to be able to say to each and every state, tell you what, for the benefit of business, you can be the sole assessor and the sole grantor of approvals or rejections, right? But, this is the important but, if you're going to have that accreditation, you've got to undertake and satisfy a continual watching process to make sure you're complying with the rules. The moment you don't comply with the rules, the application will be called in from you and taken to the Commonwealth, and you will lose your accreditation. So that's a discipline. And the gathered group I talked about before, the 21, couldn't quite get their minds around that. And I said, look, you don't trust the Commonwealth, you don't trust the states, we've got to trust someone. So we'll put it into the rules, the environmental standards, and they will be inflexible, and then it will be incumbent on the federal minister, because it will be reported in Parliament, that if a state hasn't complied with the rules, they lose their accreditation. Business will go to berserk because they now we've got to go through a two-tier, two-pronged sort of approach to deal with it. The final thing, Adrian, and then I will shut up for a minute, is this. The environmental standards are now coming out. So we've got the law in place. That was absolutely miraculous. November 28, 2025, the Senate had gone through a whole day of, you cannot imagine the processes they went through. I actually spoke to Tony Burke afterwards, who made, I'll tell you what, the next review I'd like to do is of parliamentary processes. He said, Graeme, he said, you're not getting anywhere near them, he said, because you're making them efficient. And it's Karen can stand, Elbow and I are the only two that understand what they are, so I said, get your things out of it. But, so the law was passed, and as they did the final vote, I stood up. I still get moved by this, but I turned to my colleagues in the department who were sitting behind me and I said, great thing, guys, thanks so much. And I choked up because it was 5 years after the report, which took 12 months to get there. But the environmental standards are the rules, they're very, very important. And the main environmental standards called the material national environmental or matters of national environmental significance. That's been published for a second time. And what I strongly advocate to the Minister is that there are too many expressions like where appropriate, where possible. I've said to Lethe, you don't want all that, make it absolute, or if you have to do something that's a bit of a rider, then that the proponent should use their best endeavours. Now, for those of us that are lawyers, I was one half a century ago, best endeavours means you've got to bend over bloody backwards, really, really try hard, you've got to do everything you possibly can. It's almost an absolute standard. And I'm hoping government takes that up, because that'll stop those conga line of activists that are lining up outside this door.
Thanks very much for that.
What was the question?
Well, I guess based on what you were saying though, like the review took 5 years. It started with the government of one political party, ended with the government of another political party. Throughout that, you had states changing government as well. No doubt there were also changes to appointees within government departments of who was running what. How did that work? And I guess what sort of barriers did that create and changes to the process?
Adrian, it didn't worry me in the slightest. Look, I'm not political. I was many, many decades ago. I'm not political, and governments are both persuaded and understand that. And I'll call it as I see, and I think it ought to be. So when the legislation was going through the Senate, I was up in Canberra that day in Parliament House, and the work I've around, I was up there, and I got calls from Sky News and ABC, you have no idea, all to come to your interview. So I thought, well, bugger it, I'm going to actually tell them what I think. So I said, I thought that the coalition's behaviour on this was shameful, that it was a disgrace, the approach that they were adopting, that they commissioned this review. I know the Minister supported it, and I've never revealed how I do know, but I do know, and I've got it in my files at home. And I said, she congratulated me on the review. I said, it just simply is disgraceful that they're now opposing it for the wrong reasons. I then went out, by the way, and congratulated Sarah Hanson-Young of the Greens, because she sat down with Murray Watt and reached a deal to pass the legislation. And the Minister showed me the summation of what she agreed to. And I sat there and I said, tick, 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 double tick, 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 double tick. I said, absolutely brilliant. And I saw her afterwards, we had a meeting gathering in Murray Watt's office, and I said to Sarah, I said, thank you so much. I said, you showed common sense, objectivity, and a desire to actually get something done for the environment. And I said, it's not for me. I said, I'll be long dead before this happens. It's for the people that were standing up here before. It's our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, future generations. And at long last, we've got, through the admirable work of Murray Watt, the support of Sarah Hanson-Young, we've now got an outstanding piece of law to work with. I must say that the next day I went into Parliament for the House of Representatives discussion on it, and Elbo got up and he pointedly turned to Susan Lee, who was Leader of the Opposition, and he said, you commissioned Samuel to do this review, you got the review, you embraced it, why are you now opposing it? And that was politics. In the political scene, Sarah Hanson-Young was great to work with. The problem was the Nats. And I sat with Matt Canavan, you talk about various political persuasions. I sat with Matt Canavan during the course of the review. I just let that discussion sit to my colleague who was doing the, I said, well, that was an hour of time that's wasted, and at my age, you know, you really relish those that you can't get back.
That's right. You touched on, I guess, the younger generation, and often the debate within sort of the environment, it's a competition between environmental protection and economic development, and that they're competing objectives. After everything that you've seen, do we have that debate wrong?
No, yes, we have, and it's not a competition. The competition is put out there by big business that say, you know, you can't have the environment protected and also economic growth. That's nonsense. And the objective of this review was to actually strike the balance between the two. And you strike the balance by saying the environment has to be protected. By the way, the environment is not climate change. The environment is leadbeater possums, it's orange-bellied parrots, it's grasses, it's trees, it's all those things. But I said we can do that by having a proper market-based mechanism where you can have economic growth as well as, you know, protecting the environment. Now, let me give one example. I've got an in-law who lives in Adelaide, but she's got a massive farm over near Bordertown, tens of thousands of acres. And she was saying to me, oh, what does all this mean, Graeme? She said, I can't destroy any trees anymore to make room for grazing of cattle. I said to her, Murray, I said, think about this, you've now got a choice. You can leave the trees there and have slightly less land to graze your cattle, but the trees have got a value because they protect a particular threatened species, and that's worth something on the biodiversity market. Or alternatively, you can destroy the trees and have more land for grazing cattle. Work out the equation as to what's more value. And she looked and I gave her some figures. She said, I'm better to leave the trees there. Precisely. And we did this with water rights. We created in the National Competition Council water rights in the Murray-Darling Basin. And in Leeton, New South Wales, they grow rice, use a massive amount of water. And I used to say to the people representing the rice growers cooperative there, to grow your rice, you will get $300 per gigalitre of water. But you can sell that gigalitre of water up or downstream to horticulturalists for $3,000 a gigalitre. Doesn't it make sense not to grow rice there, but to actually sell the water rights up or downstream? Same principle. They didn't get it.
So I guess future generations look back at this period, Graeme. What do you think, or what do you hope they'll say that we got right?
I'm hoping that what to do is that they'll look back on November 28, 2025 and say, thank you. Thank you to the Parliament of Australia for passing these laws and for getting the environment protection, biodiversity conservation right at long last. Interestingly, and look, I will bet the bottom dollar, which I don't have extra, because I don't ever carry money anymore to watch the Visa cards, but I'll bet the bottom dollar the same thing is going to happen with the charter tax reforms, that within about 6 months, they'll be under something else, you know, with the business will be out there, it's in all the best interest to be under something else. So have you noticed that although these laws were passed on November the 28th, and there's a big hullabaloo about it's the end of the world, blah, 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 it's all fair advantage, they're on something else. So they're now onto Coles and Woolworths, or they're onto cost of living, or the 0.25% that's gone up in interest rates, or now it's the tax reforms. I was saying to Adrian before, and I don't know how many of you remember single-digit interest rates in this country. I can go back to when I bought my first home, which is, this will age me, 55 years ago plus, and I paid then interest to Language Building Society of 9%, and I never saw single digit again until more recent years. We're now talking 4% plus for interest rates. And I'm saying to myself, you know, it's because the current generation has been feather bedded into, you know, interest rates of 3% or thereabouts, and then suddenly the media goes hysterical and lifts the, you know, because the RBA lifts interest rates by 0.25% or 0.5%. Oh my gosh, if only I had 4% or 4.5% interest rates back then, how much better and easier would it be for me? But this is what happens. And the media run these lines, and yeah, if I had time, I'd get off my chest what's been going on with tax reform and certain outlets in the media at the moment, the Australian Financial Review, to mention this too.
Well, like you were telling me as well, you had a big birthday over the weekend. So I guess you've spent a lifetime to date leading difficult reforms across so many different areas. But involved in that is building consensus amongst people who don't always agree and usually disagree. So I guess to conclude, what's the most important lesson you've learned about how to create lasting change?
Listen, but form your own view as to what's right, having taken account of all the views of all the interested parties, but you've got to listen, but don't let them dictate what you think is right. Now, you know, I hope I don't suffer from after-interest to say that everything that I've recommended or done has been right, but it's generally tended to prove to be the right course of action. So listen, take account of the various issues, importantly take account of the political imperatives. I remember meeting with the Environment Department, there were 300 or 400 of them, and I said, guys, let me tell you, this will be my review. I said, it'll be my views. But you've got to understand that whatever you do in political life, you're going to, it's like Decision Tree 101, you will get to a particular point and you'll say, oops, hold on, that's going to hit a massive political brick wall. You don't stop, you work out your way around it and how to deal with it, so that your minister can say, never thought of that, that's great, thank you very much, and that lets you, proceed along the process. So you do all of that. And then the next one is communication. You've got to be able to communicate. It's one of the problems that Chalmers is running up against at the moment, is that he's got a highly complex tax reform package, and it's very difficult to communicate tax reform to anyone, which is why it's always been so difficult. I did a speech recently when I was awarded a doctorate at Monash, and the theme of the speech was about leadership and achieving change. And I started off by saying I like the C word, which took a few of them back. And I said, the C word is communication, it's commitment, it's courage, it's collaboration, it's consensus, it's all those things, but consensus should not allow you to move away from the fundamental objective, which is to act in the public interest. And I'll finish off just by giving you a very quick anecdote of a discussion I had with Sir Selwyn McCown, the late Governor General, just before I took on the ACCC, and I had it was a big challenge, the ACCC, and he said to me, Graeme, his process was to let you answer the question rather than to provide an answer. He said, do you feel the need to be liked? And what do you want to be your legacy? And I thought for a few seconds, and I said, Sir Selwyn, you cannot feel the need to be liked if you're going to act in the public interest. And secondly, I want my legacy to be one of a reputation for impeccable intellectual and personal integrity, to have been relevant in the public interest, no more and no less. That was the message I gave to the graduates at Monash. And I think if we can learn those lessons, then it seems to me, I'm sorry, this is hubris on my part, but it does seem to me that yeah, they're the fundamental lessons of how you bring about good for the public. And I was so impressed to hear the awardees today, all focusing on just that.
Well, Graeme, thank you for your unbelievably inspiring address through that conversation. Thank you to Adrian for orchestrating the conversation. Before you both rush off the stage, I'd like to present on our behalf a little gift.
It's the wooden box, I think.
Well, it was probably worth the wooden box, but unfortunately it's a bottle of Yarra Yering, or Yering Hill wine, but also the most important thing, which is part of our heritage, is a pair of socks. Manufactured in Australia, 200% Australian made, by Wilderness Wear, led by Philip Endersby, our past president. So I'll bring this over and wish you well. Thank you, Graeme. It was a phenomenal conversation. While I'm talking, I'm going to ask someone who was mentioned earlier, Manon, to come up to the podium. She's going to help me with probably the most important closing thing we've got to do. But it is our practice at these luncheons to announce the carbon output of this luncheon, and I don't have any context to say whether this is good or bad, but we've calculated the emission of carbon per participant at 4.2 kilograms. And overall, the event's produced around about 0.4 of a tonne of carbon dioxide emission. So what we will be doing as a club is we'll be paying for carbon credits to compensate for those emissions. And now to the business. Pretty much everyone who's bought a ticket will be keen to know the outcome. I'll first of all draw. Sorry.
Can you mix?
Skip another. This is the randomisation process, and it's probably not a good idea to look in because you can almost see which ticket you're picking. So this is for the first prize, a bottle of nearly 30-year-old bottle of Grange Hermitage. Okay, the winner is Zai Yerondis. Oh. Congratulations, Zai. Now, the second prize is a wine that has been called a Poor Person's Grange, bottled in 389, and the winner of that is, I'm guessing, Richard Parker, who didn't put his Christian name on the ticket. So congratulations, Richard. And the third prize is a bottle of 2021 St Hugo Cabernet Sauvignon, still a lovely wine. And this is so good because I had bought a few tickets. It would have been very embarrassing if my name was drawn. The winner of the third prize is Josie Dillafez. Josie, you knew who I was talking about, one of our visiting teachers. Congratulations, Josie. Thank you, Manon. That's fantastic. And please, could the winners come up afterwards, and we'll hand over the goodies. Finally, I'd just like to remind everyone that next week Rotary Melbourne has another event, It's going to be quite an interesting one this time. It will be an outdoor event, or semi-outdoor anyway, at Queen Victoria Market, where we will be hosted by District Governor Peter Shepherd, who was actually one of the managers of the market during the Wednesday night market. So for those that are interested, check it out. It's a fun night. Please look at the website or our weekly bulletin for more details. And thank you everyone for coming. I hope you found this an inspirational event. It's certainly phenomenal to have such a candid conversation about the way the world works in the policy setting environment. So thank you all for being here. We look forward to seeing you again next year, and with that I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.